You're listening to Rock and Roll Grad School with Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling. What are you going to do about it?
Hello, kiddies. We're going to have a real good time together. We're going to have a soulful time together.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can say that, right?
Yes, very soulful time together.
And we need to give a tip of the mortarboard to producer Rachel for suggesting this week's guest.
Yes.
Or did she just suggest the genre almost?
Oh, no, she suggested he himself.
So this week we've got Neal Sugarman from the Dap Tones, the Sugarman 3, and Dap Tone Records.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because obviously we're communicating for a while before we do these interviews and going back and forth and setting everything up. And Neal was particularly difficult to pin down with the summer and all of us traveling and doing things.
He wasn't difficult. He was just busy.
No, but right. Well, and so were we.
Oh no, we were actually.
What I like to tell myself is that we were busy and hard to pin down.
So we're difficult.
Oh, that's right. No, we were
Neal's
difficult.
busy.
We couldn't pin. Yes. Okay. Exactly. So, but it worked out perfectly because coming out very, very soon, later this week even, is this really fascinating live document of Dap Tone Records at the Apollo with all of the guests and performers one would expect from Dap Tone Records. And by the way, going through the music to pick out to play on this episode was a whole lot of fun. No, it's just a blast. So because they filmed it, so there's a multi-album set, there's CDs, there's DVDs, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And they are celebrating the 20th anniversary of Dap Tone Records, and don't mess that up like I did.
Right. Okay.
So that would be very exciting.
It's fine.
Exactly. So,
but he did give my town a bigger shout out than your shared town.
We don't need to go into details.
It's fine. It's cool. Just need to let you know.
Speaking of artists going to see artists perform live.
Yes.
You went to go see Three Gentlemen.
I did go see Three Gentlemen.
Nick, Joe, and Kevin. I want to say Stuart. Okay,
no,
Kevin, the Jonas brothers,
mm-hmm.
to their mother and the rest of us.
It was quite the event.
Tell me more.
Well,
it's a ringing endorsement.
I know. No, actually, it was a really good show when the show finally happened.
Heidi, can we get a quote for the newspaper? Sure. It was quite an event.
Like when I met Obama.
Right.
It's a great day to be a Detroiter. Great day to be an American. Kevin Jonas, first and foremost. Unlike the boy bands of yore from back in my day, there was always the one that maybe everyone thought was like the not as popular, not as cute, not as whatever.
The Jordan, sure.
No, everyone loved Jordan.
Keep going.
A lot of people said it about Jonathan, but I actually love Jonathan. I mean, I'm the girl that loves Andrew Ridgely, so.
Right. Would that be the Isaac or the Taylor?
Oh, from Hanson?
Yes.
What would be Isaac? Because everyone loves Taylor, but Zach Hansen's my favorite because Zach Hansen's birthday is the same day as mine.
He's the drummer, right?
Yeah,
anyway, we're
little munchkin.
We're getting off track
now.
He's
now married with children, but that's okay. So unlike bands of yore, Kevin Jonas has a massive following.
Okay.
I mean, people love him. But this show was interesting because there was a severe storm warning.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to shelter in place in the pavilion, even though we were supposed to be on the hill. And we went with several exchange students who've only been in America for a short time.
Oh, great. So welcome to America. Here's
right.
Our greatest export.
And we're going to.
The brothers Jonas, and they probably will kill you.
And you're not going to see them perform, most likely.
Perfect.
And of course, the security guard said, we got to move into the shelter, into the pavilion. And somehow it got lost in translation. They thought he said that if the show did go on, we would stay in the pavilion. And all of the convincing of no, you'll move to the lawn didn't quite fly. So then they got so bored after 2.5 hours, they wanted to just go to the car and leave and go get McFlurries, which they were equally as excited about as seeing the Jonas Brothers.
There's nothing like disappointed exchange students.
Right. but Jamie said, well, the ice cream machines are always broken after 4 o'clock. So it's not going to happen. And we will die if we go out in this. Cause it was like the Wicked Witch was coming by, the cow from Twister, the whole bit.
Sure.
So finally they decide, Jamie's dad was a retired sheriff. He had the scoop that, yeah, they were going to try to play. So we move. And of course we're going to move to the lawn now. And they're all disappointed, don't understand why. So we move to the lawn and they immediately pick this spot on the lawn, like concert amateurs, bottom of the hill, so closer to the stage.
True.
2 giant pillars. I'm like, guys, you can't see there. We got to go up the hill. The rules for you got to go up the hill.
Yep. You got the screens.
Right. You got to move up. What? Like, come on up. And on the way in, initially early in the night, I had said, I know there's a long line for t-shirts. If you want a t-shirt, you got to stop now because they often run out. And I guarantee you, there will not be a time during the show that you're going to want to go. Or if you do go, you're going to miss your favorite song. It's just the rule of concert going.
Yep. You do not. Yeah. You don't want to miss Bop if you're in line for shirts.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, well, of course, they didn't go for shirts, whatever.
Do they have music? I don't want you to name the country. Do they have music where these exchange students are from?
I believe so.
Okay.
And I believe many of these bands are quite popular in said countries. The other thing that came up was one of them had been to their first concert prior to this one. This was their second concert. And they were really surprised and amazed because when they left the concert, they were walking to the car and all of a sudden they heard more music. Like the band came back out. I said, well, okay, so that literally happens at every show here. And I think it does there too in other countries, but that's okay. So you never leave the show until the lights come up because they will always come out and play more songs.
Right.
Called an encore. So then, all right, we're on the hill, blah, blah.
I would love to see you explaining all of this to somebody who is speaking English as a second language, by the way.
I know.
Next time I want a crew following you around filming.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
And me also trying to be like, come across as being, I'm clearly their, I drove them all in a minivan. I'm clearly like their mom's age. Right. And then on top of that, I also, trying to think I'm cool, that I know music.
Right. But you're drinking Chardonnay out of a thermos.
But I should have been. I'm not going to go that far. I still have my non-mom standards, but so then they're so excited, and finally at 9:30 they're finally coming out, and they're so ready, and they're all excited, and out comes Kelsey Ballerini because she's the opening act. And you've never seen 5 more devastated girls in your life than 5 girls who expect to see the Jonas Brothers, and out comes this blonde little country girl. Although she rocked it, she did a mini set. She was off. So then the band comes out at 10. They were great. They were played nonstop. It was like Hit Fest. Of course, the whole way to the show, one of the girls was like, I just want to hear him say red dress, because there's a whole red dress thing, which Jonas Brothers fans will know. Okay. She gets up because she's
hello to all of our Jonas Brothers
fans,
listeners.
So she goes to get her hoodie. She wants to get a hoodie.
Okay.
Play the red dress and do the whole red dress.
You've got to be kidding me.
Like right on cue.
Oh my God.
Right on cue. And then comes back the whole bit. So they play like this whirlwind set. They go after the noise ordinance, pay the extra half hour, and they're done. And we're like, okay, time to go. And they're like, but no, you said they always come back to do an encore. I'm like, yeah, they're not doing an encore tonight because they started really late. There's a noise thing. We got to go. No, they're going to come do an encore. I'm like, no, they really, is there any other song they didn't play? No, like, so we got to go. Well, right. I thought they always come back. So then the other thing that was amazing about this show was there was the requisite guy on the hill who the whole time shouted for Slayer.
Perfect. So he was there for the right reasons.
He was there for the right reasons.
I'm probably the only one who wants to know this, but where in Newton did you grow up?
Well, kind of Newton Highlands.
Okay, I was in Newton Center.
Okay, yeah.
So like a block from where Brigham's used to be, Beacon and
Okay.
Center Street, that corner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Where did
Um,
where did you go to high school?
I would have gone to North. I went to St. Sebastian's in Needham instead.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
you would have
I went to Newton South. Yeah.
okay. I was gonna say you would have been South.
Yeah.
And I guess the question that more people might be interested in, where are you now in Europe?
I'm actually in Zurich, Switzerland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
How'd you end up there?
Well, my wife is from here.
That
So,
doesn't help.
Yeah. Well, we lived in New York. We have 2 kids and we lived in New York. She moved to New York actually 2001. So, and I moved to New York from Boston in 91. So, we met because I was traveling around playing music and, we would go, she was coming back and forth. And just around 2016, it was right. There was a sort of shift in my life. Sharon Jones had passed away. And so the sort of touring element of my life was going to change. And we were looking at houses upstate, kind of Cold Springs, New York, around that area. I don't know if you're familiar. And then Trump got elected, and just
Zurich is seeming more and more appealing.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is all making perfect sense.
Yeah. No, it was the situation at the time was that because we still have our office in Bushwick, that I would be going back and forth, and I even, we moved here from. I have a house in Sunnyside, Queens, and my mother-in-law had an apartment there because she was coming to visit a lot. So I had this little studio apartment. So I thought I'd be back. And when I'm there, I'm really focused on the work. And then I'm here and it's, I'm just kind of a different quality of life. And, the last year and a half changed so much,
Again, yeah.
And even the idea of not having to travel is great, and the sort of change in our office, dynamic. And
What has, or I guess, is the appreciation of this type of music more or less in Europe or in Sweden in particular?
Switzerland.
God, I'm so embarrassed.
Sweden, it's does well.
They hate it. Yeah.
It's always strange. So when I started sort of touring as a musician, and this is about 2001 when I put my first record out under my name and really started touring pretty extensively with this sort of organ soul jazz band called the Sugarman 3. We were mostly playing in Europe. And the reason for that was that there was just a sort of infrastructure for bands to come over, these, like, they call them associations. So you would, you'd play this gig somewhere in France and it would probably be somewhat government subsidized. So the people who were working there were, involved in some kind of apprenticeship or internship, and it just functioned differently. But at the end of the day, because a lot of these venues had backing, we were getting paid better. So it was a much better touring situation. And then you'd go back to the States, and I tell the story of like showing up at Chicago. We felt we were kind of hot stuff because we've been touring all over the world, and you show up at some venue and you're a little early, and you ring the door, and the sound man basically comes out and says, "Come back in 10 minutes."
Of course. Like, really?
Whereas like you're over here and you kind of like, oh, can I offer you this green salad? And,
right. Like, come on in, have a seat.
Yeah. But as far as so that was kind of, from my perspective, my first playing music. It was always fun coming over to Europe and playing, but man, there's no there's nothing like playing music to your people, and playing especially soul music, and you know, there's an audience here, and it's some French guy comes up to you after and, oh, congratulations on the gig, and you're like, what, you know? And they all mean well, and it's nice, but when you're when, you know, you play somewhere in the US, or, you know, whether it's New York or Chicago or San Francisco, or, and people are just clapping on the right side of the beat, and it, you know, it really feels like, you know, you're communicating on a deeper level because it is American music. As far as the Daptone Records, I say about a third of our business is in Europe. So it's substantial, you know, we have distribution in every territory, and it's an important part of our business. We're currently doing a campaign for our 20th anniversary, and this Live at the Apollo record that's coming out. And I have to say, we've gotten so much more. I'm doing interviews daily for German and French, you know, newspapers, and very little is coming in from the States. That's a little disappointing, you know?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I feel that here everyone's otherwise obsessed at the moment and forgetting the importance of music and how it can bring us back together a bit.
Sure,
you know?
yeah, absolutely.
Especially soul music. That's the great. I have this whole philosophy. I'm from Detroit. I don't get to share the whole Newton tie-in, although everybody seems to have a Detroit connection. So I feel like soul music, of all the music, is the closest to the universal musical language. I feel it's hard pressed to find someone. You. Right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, especially American music, it's a tradition that comes from, you know, obviously it's African American music, because it's a combination of what was happening in the Baptist church, and then sort of became, you know, what was happening on pop radio in the 60s, and a combination of that. But you know, it's weird, like being, you know, a bunch of white guys playing soul music too. I actually think that's also been a tradition. You know, many of the musicians, it was always like Stax Records and and Muscle Shoals. It was really a combination of white people and black people, you know, playing this bluesy music together. So that I do think that's part of the tradition that you might not see that on the back of the record covers, but it's in the grooves of the records.
Totally agree.
But Detroit, that's the ground to get down.
Thank you.
Sort of beats Newton, Massachusetts.
Thank you. I'll take it. Well, and we were fortunate enough, in addition to speaking with you, to be able to speak to Steve Cropper recently too.
Oh,
and
cool.
Obviously, he echoed that and all of the time in Stax, and it's so amazing when we're out there listening not only to the music you create yourself, that's known as just as you or the Sugarman 3, but then also to be hearing like, well, we're going to be talking to Neal soon, and we're hearing Amy Winehouse, or, you know, we just talked to our buddy Steve, and oh, that's him, and playing with Otis, and you as great musicians also playing such a huge part of creating so many other great musicians' music that sometimes maybe the general population doesn't know that you were a part of.
Sure.
Of that fabric. And so what does it feel like, not only to hear your own music, but when you walk into a store anywhere in the world and suddenly you hear something you played on? Do you look around and be like, that's me? Or
it depends depends on what song it is.
And that's totally fair. Sometimes
I mean, if everyone's rolling their eyes to Uptown Funk, you're like, just pull your jacket up and keep walking.
No, I mean, that's a weird one. That one is the one that boy, I wish there's something that exists everywhere but in the US, which is called performance royalties. And there's a royalty that's designated for the people who actually perform on the record. And for instance, Amy Winehouse record, although we maybe didn't get paid that much up front, it was initiated in Europe. So we were, even as American players, eligible for these performance royalties. So I know what that feels like. And if that was the case on Uptown Funk, it could have been life-changing.
Yeah.
Potentially, like
unreal.
but that didn't. And I had actually gone. There was an organization that went to Capitol Hill to to try to advocate for these performance royalties, because even Frank Sinatra, all these artists like that were trying to get this passed in the US years and years ago. I think they've probably spent more money on litigating it than potentially paying out these, negotiating a lower royalty, paying these out to the musicians, and taxable income that is just kind of lost. And the sad thing about it is, because the US don't pay these performance royalties out to European artists, all this money that's paid that should be going to American artists from Europe is just, that's actually what goes into funding arts, and all this escrow money that would have gotten paid out. That's not your question. I don't know how we got off course, but as far as like, I'm proud of the work that we've done, and especially hearing that music, and you hear it and you're like, yeah, that's my boy Homer on drums, and that was me. It brings me back to a great scene that we had,
Mm-hmm.
and a great group of musicians, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
Those records, I think, were I know, I think that Mark Ronson as a producer made a really good decision calling this band that had been on the road together for so long to make these records, and you hear it, and emotionally it had more impact than potentially just a group of musicians, this guy Quest, whoever studio musicians that didn't have a real vibe together, and also understand the roots of the soul music.
Yeah, and I think you hear that too in the work with Sharon Jones, that you've got an incredibly obvious. Skilled band, you've got an incredibly skilled singer who both have a lot of experience and are really operating at this peak performance. When you listen to those records, is there one song that maybe isn't sort of the textbook definition of like the best Dap Kings record, but is there one that for you just brings back the best memories of playing together, playing with her on the road, that you just always think of like, that's the one that makes me think of everyone fondly?
Yeah. There's certain songs that I think of and that bring me back to certain eras of us playing together. Like How Do I Let a Good Man Down from Naturally was one that, like, I hear that and I just remember there's an end groove where we're just this vamp, and we would play it for so long because Sharon would do all, just improvise over it, and we would get into a very hypnotic state that I think was, what made that band great. Like we were all great. I think it's a band full of leaders, but when we played together, there was no ego. And we were really focused on what we can do to support Sharon, and what we all wanted was just like to get to that space. And I think that's like what even, when you hear great James Brown records and this hypnotic place in that music. So there's certain songs that like for instance, How Do I Let a Good Man Down, that does bring me back to that live experience. And there were moments when we were hooked that rhythm up so intensely that it felt like the stage was spinning. It was like we were. And when I think back, even I don't really even. I remember the venue and the playing. I don't remember the people. It was just, we were really able to get to another place musically. And that's kind of the memory of playing with that band. Like, and it didn't happen all the time, but when it happened, it was.
Well, you got to have the right elements to take off.
Yeah.
So this fact that you're celebrating the 10th anniversary of Daptone Records,
20th.
has it give my God. The fact that you're celebrating the 20th.
In Sweden, they're selling the.
The fact that you're celebrating the 20th anniversary, must have given you a chance to go back through some of these records and sort of look back on what you've accomplished as a label, as an artist, and these things are intertwined, has there been any surprises or like a sort of a reassessment of something where you're like, oh, that worked better than I thought it did?
Well,
Either for yourself or any other artists that you've worked with on the label.
you know, so you get caught up in the work, and you get caught up in the day-to-day stuff, and even particularly the one record that you're working at the moment, and then you can take a second and you can breathe and you can look back at the catalog. And I even like sometimes we'll put some stuff on and my wife will start listening to some Daptone stuff, and then she's like, wow, you should be working harder. Like, in other words, this music is so great. Like,
it's amazing.
You have to you have to. It's like sometimes you forget, and then you go back like, wow, this is a bona fide catalog, of a lot of music at this point. In 20 years, 60 some odd LPs, and then lots of just single songs. And you get kind of caught up and you forget. The one other thing, what I was going to say is, we're celebrating with this Live at the Apollo record. That was not meant to be, we how that came about was it was always a dream that Gabe and I had. Like, we used to joke about like having all these bands on the road and in a silver sort of old school bus with a big blue Daptone logo on the side. The kind of, I pictured like a school bus, with like rounded edges.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
but
perfect.
no, I mean, when we ended up doing it in Europe, it was like 3 nightliners. So it was a little more, a little more comfortable than that, other than the Glenn Miller situation. But
but it would be so cool. Not comfortable, but so cool.
Yeah, like the kids in the back of the bus throwing stuff, it would have been exactly like that. But just the idea of us all playing together. And so when that offer came in from the Apollo to do these 3 nights, it was 2017. There was no, what I'm saying was 2015. I don't even. It must be going on, man. I should have that at the top of my head, like what year that was. But 2 years before Sharon passed away, so 2014 now. So
2014.
Yeah, we had no we knew we were going to record this. We would put it out at some time. And it just like everything started falling apart as far as Charles, Sharon, and it was really, and then just working on new records and getting into how much music this was, which was 3 nights, all these bands, it was just kind of a daunting task that the reason it hadn't come out earlier was just sort of the workload that it took to unfold all of this stuff, not only, emotionally, time-wise, many different levels. And even the fact that we had COVID was one of the reasons that like everything was stopped and we could really just focus on getting into these tracks. So it just kind of, I always say when we're working on records with artists, like the record comes out when it's supposed to come out. You can work on some artists. Oh man, when is my record coming out? I've been waiting so long. It's like, well, it's going to take a little longer. You're always waiting. But this one to actually come out at the 20th anniversary and it not being like an attention is just the perfect example of that situation. Going through all the tracks this year, and especially like trying to figure out what the packaging was going to look like. We put together a 48-page booklet. So just revisiting all the assets, which was, we filmed everything. We had tons of photographs. We had these live concerts, and just, this last year, having that to look over and, everything, and especially the photographs and the feeling from those 3 nights, and the idea that it really was how we wanted it to be, and how the impression that we want to give, which is it was a family, and everyone backstage, it's like every picture, everyone is smiling, because it was a big achievement for, Charles Bradley to be playing the Apollo for 3 nights. I mean, this is a guy who had, dreamed of that as a kid, looking at James Brown, for Sharon Jones, for Son and Star, everyone, and not just playing that venue, but playing that venue together, and having the amount of people that were coming in and the attention that we had going into these concerts. It was, yes, it was amazing. And it's been really a great way to celebrate the 20th, really on our own, just pulling these assets together.
Amazing. So one of our producers is your not stalker level fan, but I mean, like she adores everything you've ever done. She's so mad at us because we're selfish and we wouldn't let her talk to you, even though it would have been a really nice thing we could do for her. But I have a couple questions that she has. Okay, so when Charles Bradley sang, she said it felt like his entire life was laid bare through his voice. The emotions were.
I agree with her. Yeah.
She said the emotions were totally raw. Was he completely quiet and mild-mannered in his everyday life, like a soul Clark Kent Superman situation?
No. Charles is like an amazing person. I get goosebumps a little bit thinking of him, because he was, everything that your friend, I'm sorry, what's her name?
Rachel
is feeling is 100% authentic and perfectly true, as she knew and had suspected. But Charles, passed away, a few years ago, and he was a suffering soul. And there's a documentary about him that, that these guys they were filming a video, and it kind of turned into following him around, and they made an interesting documentary. But Charles was like such a particular person, and I think that he may have, from my perspective, he may have had Asperger's or something. He was definitely on the spectrum in this way, and he never knew, everything he did was through instinct. How he functioned, how he got along, how he got by, how he, who he talked to. He was, at the end, we even had issues where he fired a manager just because different people would talk to him, and he was, he had conflicts like that. But underneath that, when you got to know him, it was just this beautiful soul, and everything he did was bearing him his heart. And when he sang, he has such a special voice. He wasn't a technical singer. He just had this gift to expose himself, and and sometimes you'd see the shows and he'd start to do some weird stuff like, what are you, but it didn't matter. It was just because it was so pure. He was really like a young soul all the time. So I don't, it was crazy. And I had the same, I wasn't playing in that band. I had done gigs with him, but many times, like especially at the very beginning, we'd see him sing, and it was like everyone in the audience is crying, including myself. It's just
that's amazing.
He was, super special, and I'm, was so grateful that we were able to help get his music heard.
For sure.
And it took a minute, like finding, because he always hid behind, one of his ways of protecting himself was hiding behind a James Brown impersonator, or hiding behind a macho persona where he was doing handyman work, but really he was a little effeminate, and he was had a hard time, expressing himself. And with Tom as a producer, like spent a lot of time like, come on, Charles, like tell your story. And then once he started telling his story, it was like the world's going up in flames. I mean, these they're so simple, these lyrics, and so meaningful and so personal, and yet it seems as though they touch so many people because someone can relate to those stories.
Yeah. The other thing, because I want to be really conscious of your time, but the other thing is she will quit and never talk to us again if I don't share this with you, which is, she said, could you please let him know that Daptone Records got me through a lot. And it is
Oh.
she's also an editor. It's my perfect editing music. Oh no, she said her perfect editing music is anything by the Budos Band. She just
Okay.
started listening to their albums in chronological order.
Mhm.
And she said that and Hooked on Classics is her other.
Okay.
But she wanted to make sure we shared that with you.
Oh, that means a lot. Yeah, thank you.
So where do you guys go from here? Have you thought about the next 20? Or are you so focused on, I mean, the Apollo
Yeah.
record is
Oh,
coming
no,
out very,
no.
very soon.
Yeah. No, it was, it's been interesting, everyone sort of in that question, everyone sort of thinks, well, there's no Charles, there's no Sharon, like, and we're not trying to replace even the reason
Of course.
that it's been hard for the Dap Kings to kind of find a footing, or, what are we going to do next? Because no matter what we do, it will seem like, hey, is that the next Sharon? And so, we definitely are not looking to that. But I it was interesting doing like Orchestra Aga Khan, which is this great Cuban record, trying to use what we do best and what we love, which is just kind of raw music. We did a Ganawan record by this band Inav Ganawan, which is, they're just vanity projects. They're fun to record. We're not selling tons of them. There were the Kochemia records, which were a little bit left field. He was a saxophone player in the Dap Kings, and he's from the Yaqui tribe, and he's sort of expressing himself with the music touches on his roots. And but that said, we started this. My partner Gabe moved back to Riverside, California, where he's from, and it took a while, but we finally he had a mixing studio there, but we finally built a recording studio. And there's this real thriving Southern California scene. And it's the same thing. It's like what we had in Brooklyn, almost like these young bands, and they're all playing together in each other's bands and writing, this kind of, it's a lot of the guys are Mexican, from Mexican backgrounds, and they're really into this kind of slow, soul music, like soul, like 60s, they call them soldies, like oldies, and there's a real scene, like this chula scene, or you go to these parties and these like all these lowriders, and they're just like grooving on soup, like William Devon, what's the song? Be thankful for what you got, like that kind of stuff. So we have this band called there's a band called the Sinceres, the Altons, and the one that we're really focusing on right now and doing an album is this band called the Sacred Souls, and we're really, hopefully help them to get to that same kind of status that we, that Sharon and Charles had, and they're really great. We just signed this young singer named Jalen Ngonda. He has some stuff, but I'm really excited about the stuff we're recording with him, which I think, and again, just kind of getting these guys in the studio and trying to help them find their voices and make great records. So yeah, it's a lot going on.
I've been laying with you night after night. Oh yeah. You leave before I see the morning light. Yes, you do. Oh yeah. All right. I always say you're not welcome no more. No. But when you're not, I open up the door. I say, get up.
Daptone Super Soul Review live at the Apollo is available October 1st wherever you get your music. For more information, check out the Daptone label, daptonerecords.com.
You can check us out on all the various socials. Be sure to visit our website at rockandrollgradschool.com, and don't forget to leave us a review.
Today's show is produced by myself and Heidi Hegquist. Our reluctant producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. This one's for Philippe. Thank you, good night, and may all your favorite bands stay together.